Welcome back to the Sacred Arts channel, where we discuss all things from the sacred to the practical. Today, we have an amazing guest. She's a dear sister and someone that can hold incredible space, Megan Allen. Megan is a multifaceted healer, a shamanic practitioner, medical Reiki master, and certified massage therapist, spearheading mind, body, soul wellness. This integrative space champions holistic healing, emphasis on mental health, emotional, physical, and spiritual well being. Through intuitive sessions, Megan helps clients harmonize their energy and elevate body awareness. She also hosts community workshops and moon ceremonies, fostering connection with nature's wisdom. Infused with techniques from traditional Chinese medicine, aromatherapy, tarot, and nature reverence, Megan's approach is uniquely transformative. Committed to sustainability, she partners with One Tree Planted for every client session or workshop that someone books, she plants a tree. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you so much, Jessie. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here, excited for our conversation.
Absolutely. We are so excited to dive into all things holistic healing. So, can you give us a little bit of insight into where you started your journey on this path?
Yes. I was a really active child. I played sports, I did competitive sports, I danced. I was really physical. And in my early 20s, I started to kind of feel the effects of all of that rigorous training. And um, in my early 20s, I started working for Johnson and Johnson and I loved it. But I was like a UPS worker in a suit. So I was getting shipments of like 4,000 pounds and I was, lugging. And I used to joke I was like a UPS worker in a suit. So it was very physical, so I feel like that just heavy weight, and I was in the car all the time, that all started to really compound on my body. And I was really feeling the effects. It was also a bit lonely being in the car but I loved being with my clients, being with my customers, dermatologists, and the offices. And really though, that heavy lifting and some other couple slips and falls, I found myself living in severe chronic pain. And that was kind of a big turning point for me, a big wake up call. And I remember I was 28 and my neurologist at Northwestern, I was living in Chicago at the time, was like, "Oh, you have a spine of an elderly person. It's not going to change that much." And I really took that. I was like, "Oh God, like, am I that old? I'm not even 30 yet, and just really, really took that. And I just wanted the pain to go away. So I was really starting to look for like anything, like I was doing dry needling, a severe TMJ treatment, deep tissue massages. And I realized that wasn't really working for me. And so I was just, wanting that pain to go away. I was so uncomfortable in my body, constantly adjusting myself, constantly trying to get comfortable. And I realized, later when I moved back to California in 2012 and I was working for an event marketing company and I started to work with holistic practitioners more, and I started to see my Reiki practitioner. I started to see a hypnotherapist and also my chiropractor who's very gentle. But so it was like once I started to really look at those from all angles in my health and well-being, I started to find this unwinding. And, I realized for so many years I had been giving my power away. Like, oh, let me go to this doctor. Let me see if they can help me. Let me see what they can do. And I realized there's no magic pill. Like, there's nothing anyone could do for me. I had to heal myself. And I really believe that when we're given the right conditions, right? When we allow ourselves to slow down a bit, to turn inward, to see like what does my unique body really need? So I was able to start unwinding and I felt like, gosh, if I could heal myself, then I could support other people in their healing journeys. And I had a dream of opening a wellness center and helping people mind, body, soul. And so that's taken, kind of twists and turns. And I don't think it's necessarily like a physical place now. It's like wherever I'm at. And I work with clients remotely on Zoom. Zoom's really changed the world. And also clients in person in California and, through workshops that I lead. So it's become more of this mind, body, soul wellness is like a virtual healing space, a sacred space for people to come and be able to really connect with themselves. So yeah, I could go on, but I just wanted to pause there and see see how that's landing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of your story, we can all identify with it. It starts with the pain in the body, the pain telling us something isn't right, something isn't, we're not on the path, we're not, this is not what we're meant to be doing. We're neglecting ourselves, we're ignoring our inner truth. Right, and I love that part of your story is you experimented with all of these conventional ways of like, okay, let me start with dry needling because that's something mainstream, that's something that wouldn't it's not too on the woo-woo side. Massage, I feel like a lot of people start with massage, and a lot of the times it makes it worse,
Hmm.
and it's because we're continuing to just try to put a Band-Aid on it. And it sounds like it wasn't until you really started going deeper into the Reiki practices, into the holistic kind of medicine that allows you to, it's not you going to a healer for them to heal you, because what Reiki really is, there's this conduit into
Hmm.
empowering you to heal yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means, especially you as a medical Reiki practitioner and shamanic practitioner, like what does that mean for somebody that's looking for that deep next level healing?
Yeah, I love what you just touched on. I think there's this thing in society a lot these days. I mean, it's been for a while, but it's like I go to someone to heal me. But to me, it's like I'm very passionate about sharing with my clients that I facilitate healing, but I don't heal you. Like you heal yourself. And so yes, what you were saying is, as and I know you are as well, like as a Reiki practitioner, as a shamanic practitioner, I am that channel. I am that hollow bone. So, being and so with Reiki, right, I'm channeling the Reiki healing vibration that is really enacting in you, in the client, the ability to heal yourself. And so it can help, right, with of course, clearing the mind. So someone maybe who's finding themselves anxious or depressed, it can help kind of clear the cobwebs I've found when I've received. And that's another thing too. I mean, for me, I've always felt if I'm going to hold space and use such and such technique like Reiki or Shamana, I want to be able to receive that first myself, right? So
Mhm.
that it's like I know what clients might or might not receive. And Reiki can be a subtle yet powerful vibration, right? Some people might feel nothing, but it's still doing something,
Yes,
which
absolutely.
right? It's kind of that do no harm, I think, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. I know that in your upcoming workshop, Sacred Alchemy, you touch on the chakras and healing. How do chakras influence our daily lives? And
Mhm.
what role do they play in self-healing?
It's a great question. Yeah, so for me, I'm really passionate about the chakras, and it's been one of those keys that's helped me to understand my body more, my mind, my imbalances. And chakras, really, the word chakra means wheel in Sanskrit. And these are the spinning energy centers of the body that go from the root, like around the pelvic bone, all the way through to our crown. And there are other ones, but these are the main seven that we really are more connected within this human body. And they're directly linked to mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual attributes. They're all also associated with a color and an element and a mantra and an organ. And we can work with essential oils and crystals. And so it's to say that if we're all energy, right? And sometimes some people say, oh, that's so woo. But really, let's look at the one of the most famous equations by Einstein. E equals mc squared, right? So it's physics too. Like everything in the universe is energy. It's frequency and it's vibration. And so I think the more that we can tap into, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that too. It's like when we can get out of our physical body and into that quantum field of energy, we can heal more rapidly. We can kind of get out of the way and let, ride those waves of energy. So with the chakras, for me, I've found, and I love teaching about this in my programs such as Sacred Alchemy, um, really how to connect with these energy centers. And for example, like, I might have a client that has back pain. And they're like, I don't know what's going on, and it probably is this disc or that disc. And let's face it, a lot of us have bulging discs and imbalances, and we can just look at it as an imbalance, right? Okay, maybe the disc is slipping this way or this way. But if I'm kind of protecting a certain area, right, then that might bring about challenges. So for that example, I might be talking to someone saying, okay, I'm curious. Like in my mind, I'm like curious that they've got lower back pain. Well, then I can look at my reference of the chakras and say, okay, that's really connected to the root in a sense of safety, in a sense of security, right? And like, are they feeling safe in their environment? Are they able to take care of their basic needs? A lot of us right now, right? The economy is a bit up and down and, a little unstable. And so their root is kind of, underactive or overactive. So these energy centers are constantly changing. And that's another thing I love is just to, take stock and see where we're at. And then we can make adjustments. Like another one that I love is say like the solar plexus right below the ribs. The color is yellow. The element is earth. And think about the organs we have in that area. We've got our stomach, we've got our spleen, our liver, our gallbladder. And this is our will to become and to grow, our will to move forward in life. And sometimes I feel like I have all these digestive issues. Well, let's look. Are you digesting your food? Are you digesting life? And that one I think really gets people. They're like, am I digesting life? I don't know.
Mhm.
Right. So are we letting things stop us and experiences kind of in our throat and our heart and not letting it process like through the intestines and out? So really using this as a channel to clear and to connect.
Mm, that's beautiful. I feel like you answered my question in the sense of like for someone in the everyday that's not yet explored Reiki, right?
Mm,
What would you say to them in terms of like getting a start on kind of exploring that? Like I loved your examples of the lower back and the solar plexus area. Those were such beautiful examples. How would you motivate a client to maybe try some of these alternative techniques?
mm. Yeah, so I would say, when we look at um, kind of the difference between Eastern and Western medicine, for me, it's Western medicine, they both have a place, right? And Western medicine is used to diagnosing, the patient a lot of times want to come in, say, what's wrong with me, doc? Write me a script, give me a pill, do physical therapy, something like that. And I love Western medicine for giving us a framework. And also, if we need surgery, right? We bless our surgeons. Like, there's an element that we need that. Um, And I've noticed where a lot of times on Eastern medicine, or what we've been taught is like, oh, this is alternative medicine, right? This is out of like the construct of Western medicine. I would love to invite people to think about this is actually really the medicine of the people, the original medicine.
Mhm.
So for thousands of years, like, and we look at even Chinese medicine, that goes back thousands of years. And then we can look at, okay, and I remember doing research years ago about the American Medical Association, and it's been certifying doctors for about like 150 years. So we can look at the time of how long people have been living and say, okay, I can hold both, and I can hold, Western medicine and Eastern medicine. And I can say, and then, Reiki, right? Stemming back from Dr. Usui in Japan. And a lot of these, or the chakras into ancient India. And we look at all of these, and if we're all citizens of the planet, right? We're all brothers and sisters.
Mm.
We've migrated here and there. And so it's like bringing those traditions and saying, okay, I'm going to try something. I think too, a dear friend of mine recently was like, I'm looking at stuff as like an experiment. And I liked that. It like just gives us that room to play and to say, wow, I might be able to try Reiki
Mm.
or go to a shamanic practitioner to seek deeper answers. I also think that alternative therapies or the original medicine of the people, they look at the whole person. And that's right, also reflected in my business name, mind, body, soul, wellness. It's like we have this triad. We are complete beings. And so if I go, like I had sinus surgery when I lived in Chicago during those like, issues in my back. And the surgeon's like just looking right like at my nose, basically, right? And like, okay, what's going on here? But what's actually going on in my jaw? What's going on in my neck? So it's
Mhm.
all important, right? As we're these ever-changing, breathing beings. And we're always healing too, which I think is so really taking our power back that, wow, we're constantly healing. And that I think sometimes we can fall, and I've been one of them, but like to a diagnosis, right? It's almost like my Reiki practitioner later said to me, Megan, it's like that doctor cursed you. And I was like, wow. And we've come to learn, right? Spelling can be casting spells with our words. So being really mindful of what we're talking about and how we're using our word.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I love that you presence that about the doctor almost cursing you or actually cursing you.
Mhm.
It's being told something and taking that in and then believing that that's what it is, like to be told that you have an old person's spine when you're only in your 20s, that can do detrimental things to your being.
Mhm.
And I truly, truly believe, like what you said, we are ever healing. Our bodies and brains are designed to self heal. And sometimes we just need that reminder, and having those practitioners where we can go and experiment can allow us the freedom and the space to be able to see how we can heal, or what our body needs to be able to heal, which is really beautiful.
100%. And I think just too, if I can just add just like a simple visual, if we were like, oh, how is our body always repairing itself? It's like even just think about, maybe you're chopping vegetables and you accidentally cut your finger. And what do we do, right? We're like, okay, let me wash it with some soap and water. Let me put an ointment on it and a band-aid. And then, right, maybe we do that for a couple days. And then we look down and we're like, wait, where'd my cut go? So it's just all the cells are always repairing itself. And it's so beautiful to think, wow, all these organs. I just even saw on Instagram this little light being, this young boy was talking about how our cells are always listening, our organs want to be talked to. So, inviting, whoever's listening to, inviting you to, if you have a pain or an ache, and maybe it's your shoulder or your heart or something, to speak to that organ, to say, I love you,
Hmm.
right? The power of affirmations of gratitude, of knowing that this beautiful body, this sacred temple that is carrying us through this earth walk on life, or this, earth walk here is carrying us. And we just forget sometimes that, like, wow, all these intricate processes are going on just for us to even have this conversation. It's amazing.
Mm. It's so amazing. I know that also part of your program, or your new workshop, you talk a little bit about acupressure. For
Mm.
those unfamiliar, can you explain the basics of acupressure and how working with meridians can enhance our overall well-being?
Yeah, I would love to. I'm really passionate, yeah, about this as well. It's again helped me provide a framework. So acupressure, is rooted in traditional Chinese medicine. And acupressure, we use the same meridian systems that acupuncturists use. It's just more of a identifying the point and holding the point, right? Instead of using a needle to stimulate the point. So some of the basic principles of traditional Chinese medicine are qi. And so, like we touched on earlier, where, well, qi is energy. And so, if everything is energy, we're tapping into a different mapping. So, right, we talked about the chakras, and then we have a different mapping of these energies through the meridians. And in Chinese medicine, they believe too, we're born with a certain amount of energy, and then it's renewed in two basic ways. So through the air we breathe, through the food we ingest. And so movement, stimulating points can help to move energy. So we're really seeing, again, kind of depending on what a person's feeling, what, someone's okay, maybe, well, I'll get there in a second, but just some other quick little principles are, so yin and yang is
Mm.
familiar, right, with yin and yang. And so we have the symbol of the light within the dark within the light. And it's looking at that holistic approach and saying these dynamically opposing yet harmonizing energies are all within. So the yin is more of the feminine energy. It's the night,
Mm.
the rest and digest. It's the front of the body. It's the earth. So the feminine elements are earth and water. So we will flow with the river of life. And the yang is more of the light of the day, the masculine energy, the back of the body, the kind of more defense side, right? The planner, the action, and the fire, the element of fire, the element of air. So we can see though, right, how we have all of that within. It's not like this is, about gender or anything. It's just masculine and feminine energy, just giving another framework. And then we have the 12 main meridians. And these are the invisible channels through the body, which chi flows. And um, each meridian has a yin and yang pair. And so they're also paired with organs. So, for example, we have the yin, the lung organ, paired with yang, the large intestine. And each of these meridians associated with a season, an element, an emotion, a color. So, right, kind of in a sense, similar like we're talking about the chakras. It's a different
Mhm.
framework, it's a different way of saying. And so,
It's the
to looking at,
physical body versus like the light body, which like that's what the chakras connect us from the light body into the physical body, right? So it's just another layer of
yeah,
healing, another layer of taking care of ourselves. I always like to tell people, it's not just one thing. I used to think that therapy was the answer because that's what society told me, right? But it wasn't just therapy. It was like my Reiki and my acupuncturist and my chiropractor and like all the people, all the team. And what I realized is like what you're talking about, they're taking care of the different layers of my energetic body and my physical body, which is really beautiful. I loved how you explained the difference between the yang and the yin and the yang. And um, I know that your workshop is going to go so much more in depth and teaching people how to take care of themselves from an acupressure standpoint. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No,
there.
no, 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 you didn't. No. I'm like, "Oh my god, yes." And yeah, and just to follow, say, maybe that example too of like the large intestine and the lungs, and we can say, okay, lung one that's located right if we follow the clavicle and into the chest right here, right? And do you feel there's kind of usually like a tender spot?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
with acupressure really meaning finger pressure, we can a couple techniques where we can wake up the point. So it's like, you get to a party and you're like, "Hey, what's up?" And then you're chill, right? So we can like push in and then release to kind of a weight of a nickel, whatever you feel that is, right? But just so we're like waking it up and we're releasing. And this is a point to releasing grief. So the lungs hold grief. Sadness. So lungs and large intestine, we can look at, okay, they're associated with grief. They're associated with the air element. We can follow the clavicle to the sternum. This is kidney 27. It's a storehouse of chi. I like to another technique is like power tapping, acu-tapping, right? Related to emotional freedom technique. They're
Mhm.
working on acupressure points. These points that we're tapping are all acupressure points.
Mm.
So just identifying and aligning with a different map of the body. And the kidneys are paired with the kidneys and the bladder. They're the winter months, they're the blue, they're the fear. So kidneys store fear. So again, we can look at, okay, someone's having pain more around their ribs or middle back. Well, are they fearful? Are they in a state of fight or flight? So my dad taught me that technique, even just warming up the hands and placing them on the kidneys.
Mm.
If you're feeling fear, I invite you to warm up your kidneys, warm up um your like adrenal glands, your fight or flight system. So those are just a couple ways. I hope I answered your question. You can tell I like
Oh my god, you went so
so
much
excited.
deeper than I hoped. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
I love it. Thank you so much for giving us a glimpse into your workshop and what you're going to be teaching and guiding people through. I'm really curious though, because I had a really hard time in my own shadow work, in my own healing, where there's came this like crossroads of like, okay, if I really want to go deeper, I have to really look at the areas that I'm still holding on to, and I need to start forgiving. So, why is forgiveness such a crucial component in the journey of healing and self discovery? Why can't I just do all these acupressures and chakra healings and just call it a day? And can you share maybe a personal experience or story that highlights this transformative power of forgiveness?
Yeah. Yeah. I know, why is forgiveness, so hard to do? I think a couple things that come to mind too. It's forgiveness of so the power of forgiveness, like the how do we forgive someone else? And a lot of times though too, it's actually like, how do we forgive ourselves? Right? Because I think we're a lot of times ones that you're saying, in this healing journey, and we're like holding on to the past, or holding on to, I messed up on this, or why didn't I do that? Or why did it take me 10 years to get over this heartbreak? I can, identify with that one. And it's like, I think it for better visuals, but it's kind of that pointing a gun, like placing blame outside, right? If we're like, I'm resenting such a person. Well, if you're pointing and you see there's actually three fingers pointing at you, so it's actually coming right back to you, right? When we resent or we're like stubborn, holding on to grudges about another, we're actually it's hurting ourselves. And so I think there's that component, and not to add like a selfish component, but in a sense, right? It's like the power of forgiveness is going to help you heal yourself. Because a lot of times the people that maybe we're holding resentment towards, they don't even know. They don't know that something happened a year ago, 10 years ago, and so forth. So I think for me, I was thinking about this forgiveness piece. I think there's a couple, two kind of things I maybe could share if that's okay with kind of two examples of
Please.
one, I was born with a lot of energy. I'm a people person. I'm very social. But about 10 years ago, my brother was getting married, and it was the night before his wedding. And I was with my cousin and my cousin's boyfriend and my brother, kind of like all of just with the family and, celebrating my brother and that he was going to get married the next day. And I came into the room, we were all just hanging out and at the hotel we were staying at. And came in with my cousin and I was like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" Like just this like wanting to create light, create celebration.
Mm.
And my cousin's boyfriend just looked at me. They were like watching TV, like doing something so stupid. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like I interrupted like a deep discussion or something. And it was I don't even remember what they're watching. And he was like, "Wow, you're just so full of yourself. Like, geez," and just I felt this like dart at me. And Jassy, there was something in that just, oh, it just was literally like a knife in my, and I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to outshine anyone. Like, what, like, am I too much? I don't want to be my bright self. Like he's saying, like, I'm full of myself. Like I took his directness, I took his tone of voice and I interpreted it. And it was all about like how what a bad person I was. And I remember like maybe an hour, I couldn't believe it. Just because for me, I'm very sensitive and very energetically sensitive. Can accept that. And I was anyway, so maybe like an hour later, he was like, I'm sorry, um it's my temper, it's my family temper, it's my French temper. And I was like, okay, but that doesn't really make it right, right? But then what did I do? I internalized it for years. I then tried to dim my light so low out of fear of outshining someone. And I love that Marianne Williamson quote. It's like, right, we can just all have our light shine. So I'm not even saying it right, but just like, right, like let our light shine and encourage others to let their light shine. There's no amount of light there's no lack. Like we've been conditioned right in like scarcity and like there's not enough light, there's not enough energy, but there's abundance. So it's like I can be my full self. And if I feel energetic, I can feel energetic. If I feel, more inward, I can do that. Same with you, same with all of our listeners, right? It's like there is enough. But I took it for years and I became depressed. I turned so inward and it was around like what we were talking about earlier. I was in chronic pain. I was so uncomfortable in my body. I mean, it really took it out of this one thing. And what I realized was as a few years and as years went by, there was still this ickiness there. But my cousin ended up marrying him. Now he's like one of my closest friends because I realized that by me not getting over it, by me sort of putting that emphasis outside myself, right? That he had that capacity to dim my light was in a sense blaming, right? And then also putting that outside where it's like, no, I internalized that. I made it mean something. Like we're these meaning making machines. I made it mean something about myself when a lot of times when people say something has nothing to do with us. So
Totally, totally. I love that you shared that story because I think that every single person listening to this can identify at some point in their life they did something that someone else didn't like and they internalized it and then they operated in a different way moving forward, whether that was for a day, a week, a month, a decade, a lifetime, right? I think we all try to modify ourselves to be liked. And I think you even mentioned it earlier, like we tend to give our power away in that way. And one of the things that I love about your story is you realize that that was not in alignment with you at some point, and it's okay to shine your light. And here's the thing, if you dim your light or shine your light, it doesn't matter what you do. someone is not going to like you. And that's the bottom line, and I think that that's the thing that we all have to get comfortable with is, like, it doesn't matter what I do, so might as well be my most authentic self and shine my light because there are gonna be people where your light bothers them. It
Yeah.
bothers them, and they're gonna do anything that they can to dim it, and so if we just continue to be ourselves.
Everyone else is taken, right? Like, there's no
Exactly,
one like us, this unique genetic makeup.
exactly.
Yeah.
And what was your second example?
My second example, oh yeah, because that was the first example I thought of, and then my other example is actually around my birth mom. So it hits a bit differently. And so I'm adopted for the listeners, and my birth mother, she looked for a home with two happy parents. I learned about that through even the paperwork, the adoption paperwork, and she placed me, in a sense, chose my parents, right? And for me, I I for years was carrying around this I'm not good enough. She didn't love me. She gave me away, right? It's like what why was I so bad that or just all the I mean, I don't know if I thought why was I so bad, but just like how could she give me away?
Mhm,
Yet simultaneously holding this deep love and connection for my family who raised me, who's the only family I know, right? I couldn't imagine being with any other family. That's the thing. Like, so it's kind of confusing. And if anyone's adopted, you might be able to relate. It's this confusing thing about feeling. I later on heard, they say like little souls, kids like choose their parents, and it's based on kind of to help whatever your soul's growth is.
mhm,
So for me, just kind of again placing this blame of the lack of probably the lack of self-love I had for myself, being like, if she couldn't love me, how can I love myself? But realizing if I could reframe that and maybe also she loved me so much that she chose and decided the hardest thing that, okay, I can't care for you and give you a life I think you'll deserve or need or want. I'm going to find these other people to raise you is actually a very selfless act.
mhm,
And so to realize that, okay, it's probably actually nothing really deeply wrong with me. Again, kind of taking the self out and being like, people say, do things, whatever was in like their context of their journey. And
mhm,
it's not always about us, right? So I think just needing to, and there's definitely so many layers of this that I've been through in my life, right? It's just the thinking I was okay, I'm a little more healed. And then it just there it is again. And like, wow. And, I've been single for a lot of my life. And why is that? And oh, I'm carrying around this, I'm not good enough. This like abandonment wound that became like so heavy. I think we heal in this kind of sacred grouse spiral, right? If we can kind of not look at time as linear and then we fall off and we're like behind. Oh, I thought by the time I'm 20, I'll be this. Nope. Then we have to get back up, fall back. And but if we can look at it as more cyclical, like those nesting dolls, right? That we can then access the points of healing. And so for me, it was, then I took me 30 years to get up the courage to even find her, and another 5 years to create the perfect letter and perfect stationery. And my Reiki master teacher was very instrumental in being one of my guides, one of my supports to process that. I mean, thank you, Eva. Like, yeah. And Rose, my hypnotherapist, who had given up a child for adoption and then also adopted a child. And so, yeah, you can see where these, right, like angels were placed on my path, these mentors that were able to really instill in me the support, but that it was my journey, and to kind of ask those reflective questions. And um, I also remember one of my other mentors, Kwame, used to say, I tell my kids, like, I don't care what you do, but move the peanut forward. Every day it's going to be different. Some days you're going to flick it, some days you're going to throw it, some days you're going to chuck it. Forward is forward, right? And it's, in a sense, the only direction we're going, right?
Yeah.
We're growing, we're evolving, we're in that cyclical, cycle of life. So, yeah, but when I then wrote a letter to my birth mom and concluded a couple pictures and was, like this was a threshold I needed to go through, and she never wrote back, and she doesn't want to meet me. And so, at least for now, and that was another like, oh, okay. Part of it was about, right, taking those steps for myself so that I would know that I had turned over this rock and that rock in order to find more inner peace. So, learning to forgive her for the choices she made for whatever was best for her at that time, I think, yeah, has been freeing. And it's something I'm sure I'll continue to work with, right? I think our healing in a sense is never done. It's just in layers and coming back, yeah, to wholeness and stuff. So
Mhm. Thank you so much for sharing that deeply personal story. I can feel how much and see through your story how much you've grown, how much you've healed from this because it's not easy. As human beings, it is natural for us to think about what is it about me? What is it about, what did
mhm,
I do? How was I so bad? What did I do in the past life to deserve not being wanted or loved by the person that gave me birth, right? And I can only imagine, but I've heard story after story from people that have been adopted that there is this visceral feeling of not being wanted, of all of the things that you had stated, right? And it takes true deep healing and true self-reflection and work and coming into alignment with yourself to
yeah,
even utter the words that you uttered today. Like, I can absolutely see how much you've grown and how much you've taken the tools that have been taught to you and have implemented them and interwoven them into your own life. So thank you so much for sharing that
mm,
piece of yourself with our audience today.
thank you for receiving. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of what you had mentioned today, because when we're in victimhood, when we are blaming or shooting that gun, like you said earlier, we're often interwoven with other people. We're like interlaced in their auras. We're interlaced in the stories that we're told. I want to talk a little bit about what does holding the key within, because you've done workshops on on this
Mhm.
concept in the past, and I think you're going to also be including this in your Sacred Alchemy workshop. What does that mean to you, and how does this connect to achieving a sense of wholeness in one's life?
Mhm. Great question. Yeah, so I think holding the key within to me means it's like what we were touching on earlier, right? So often we look outside of ourselves for what the best thing to do is. What do you think? What should I do? Let me read this. Let me, yeah, just constantly seeking outside of ourselves. And I feel like, and a lot of times to validate, right? To validate our thinking, okay, it's okay to do this. It's okay to take that step. We're giving our power away. We're giving our energy away, right? It's like we're throwing these energy darts out here, out here. What we're doing too is we're spreading our fire all over the place. We can start to get tired. I don't have enough energy. Well, because how many places is your energy outside yourself? And, and of course, I know this because I've done this. So don't think, I've never dealt with this. I have. It's been, right, this profound healing for me. And to realize that, it was when I was especially really in that daily chronic pain. And when I also hit a really deep bottom, dark night of the soul a few years ago, is like that realization that no one is coming to save me. Like, No one's riding on their magic horse to be like, come with us, we got you. Now, don't get me wrong, there's community, right? But it's like, I realized I'm the only one that can save myself. I'm the only one that can heal myself. Like, you can't heal for me, right? You can't work through my limiting beliefs or through my, hardships, my trauma. You have your own life to live, right? So it's like really calling back these parts of self. And I think this holistic approach to health and wellness is looking at the mind, body, soul, is looking at, how do we collect all parts of ourselves to make us feel more whole, complete, um, spacious in our own bodies, and to really realize that no one does the healing for you. You hold the key to healing yourself. And
Mhm,
so it's really like you holding that inner flame, you hold that key.
mhm.
And
Oh.
yeah. So I think it's that part of coming back to sovereignty, coming back to wholeness and saying, wow, here's where I've been codependent. Here's where I've been really leaning on another, whether it's your spouse or your parents or even your children, right? Depending on where we're at in life, coworkers, bosses, where have we been not able to make a decision on our own? And so to realize these things and like they're those energy cords and to start to cut them off and say, okay, this is where I'm leaking my energy. Okay, you don't need to cut them off like aggressively, right? But just like, let me do a little trimming. Let me trim my garden. Like, let me say, okay, that's not my energy or that's not my trouble, right? That I'm taking on, that's my friends, or again, a spouse, a loved one, a coworker. Like, and let me send that energy, let me thank it, and let me send that energy back to that person. And so we start to clean up our garden, and then we can start to really tend to our inner garden. And then, I think part of also coming back to sovereignty is having those clearing conversations, right?
Mhm,
It's clearing our side of the road and saying, this is where I take responsibility. This is where I take responsibility. And maybe it's like a challenge you had with a loved one, right? Or again, a coworker or something. And it's like, what responsibility? Because we all have a part in it, right? So where can I take responsibility and say, hey, Jazzy, we had this, difficult situation or this disagreement. And here's what I would like to apologize for, right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to say anything back, right? So it's merely really stepping into our power and taking responsibility. So I think it's that part of forgiveness, but it's a part of taking responsibility for our own part in it and saying, where did I maybe, step out of bounds? Or where do I think I'm responsible for the misunderstanding, the disagreement, whatever it was? And then we kind of step back and again be with ourselves and just that person may come around in that moment. It may be months, it may be years, it may be never. But just to
mhm.
know that that's part of coming back into your sovereignty, your wholeness.
Absolutely. I love that, and I can't wait to hear how you integrate that into the program and how you go deeper into that. One of the things that we had discussed about within your program that I'm really intrigued on is syncing with the cycles. What does
Mm.
that mean to you? And what are some practices that people can adopt to be better sync with their natural rhythms?
Yes, 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 yes. So everything, almost everything in life is very cyclical. It's in cycles. We can even look at, quite honestly, our birth and our death, right? Our first breath. Like life is what happens between when we take our first breath and our last breath, at least in this physical plane. And those are kind of they can be main markers. But what I was thinking about is the cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. that we go through so many times in our lives, right? It's the as we're shedding, as we're evolving, as we're healing, we go through these mini deaths. We shed that which no longer serves in order to rebirth. And, a lot of so healing is in those cycles, the sacred grouse spiral, like we were talking about. So
Mhm.
healing and layers of past trauma, kind of revisiting, saying, God, there's that again. But okay, what other layers can I heal as I continue on my life, on my journey?
Mhm.
And one of my favorite quotes is by Lao Tzu, and it's nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished.
Mhm.
And so if we can think, okay, we have this symbiotic relationship with nature, right? We are nature experiencing herself in this 3D body. We have the elements within. We've touched on, a lot today, which I absolutely love. It's like, we can look at the yin and the yang, the different energies, the different elements of, the earth, the water, the fire, the air, right? We have all that within. So I think first is like knowing that we are nature,
Mhm.
and then looking at how can we sync with the cycles, the seasons of the earth and the cycles of the moon. And so I like to share with, like, on a macro level, we can look at the earth seasons. And so at least let's just play with, like, here in the northern hemisphere right now, we're in the fall, right? So we're in the harvest time. Excuse me. And then we're going to go into the winter months, which, right, if we look at what nature's doing, again, if we're like, oh, I feel like I should be super social right now, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Well, look at what nature's doing. There's not a lot of growth happening. There's more turning inward. And look at the bears like hibernating. We're turning inward. We're tending to ourselves. We're maybe a little more quiet. We're journaling. A lot of us can become depressed, which I don't really mean that in air quotes, but I just mean like depressed can be just a thing on the scale of our emotions, right? So if we're feeling down, we can label that as depression, yes. And don't get me wrong, I take mental health very seriously. Like some of us are chronically depressed, and you know what I mean? And we need
Mhm.
whatever support we need. But some of it can be seasonal. And so to kind of look at that and say, okay, it's not this actual absolute, like I'm depressed. It might just be, wow, this is the winter months. This is the time where I'm slowing down. And so often we're human doings, right? We're like, go, go, go. I need to be doing this, whether it's to prove our worth subconsciously or to get something done. We're in a very action
Mhm.
oriented society. And don't get me wrong, that's part of it. And that's one of the great things about being human. But to also remember that we're human beings. So to learn to what it is to be and to be okay with slowing down. So in the winter, right, we're slowing down, we're starting to plant the seeds. And then in spring, life starts to come up. And it's like, oh, okay, here is life again. The birds are chirping, the flowers are coming up. Okay, my ideas that I was planting even for business, those are starting to come to life. And then in the summer, right, what happens? The heat is turned up. Things are in a go, 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 a faster pace. Things are coming more to life. The projects are in motion. And then we come back to the harvest, right? And we harvest the fruits of our labor. And to also celebrate,
Mhm.
because so many times we forget that. So the pause and the celebration. That loves is so important, to just take the time to say, hey, I just accomplished this, and let me download maybe the learnings and do some integration before I start something else. So
Mhm.
I hope that kind of showed like how I like to think about the seasons of the earth and how we can start to look at that, and from, personal planning to business planning. And then with the moon cycles, we shorten that up. And so the moon is more on a 28-day cycle. So let's think about what else is on a 28-day cycle. Traditionally, A woman's period is about 28 days, right? Metamorphosis, 28 days. Shedding of a snake's skin, 28 days. What I learned when working for Johnson& Johnson in dermatology years ago was we shed our skin actually every 28 days about through toweling, through sloughing, through, exercising. I know, it's crazy. So just the
Wow.
little layers, right? Yeah. So we have this new life, this new layers of ourselves being revealed all the time. So thinking about that, thinking about again the cyclical nature, and when we can think of, okay, the new moon, the darkness, the yin, the rest, that's the planting the seeds time, right? And then the moon, the light is gonna go from total yin, increasing to yang. The full moon's actually halfway, and
Mm.
that's the come to fruition. That's the celebration. That's also the shedding what no longer serves. And then it starts to get darker again into full darkness. So we can shorten up the cycles and say, okay, and everyone's different. So tuning into where in the cycle do you feel more creative, more energy? And again, giving yourself that permission to say, God, I'm really dragging this week. Okay, maybe that's not the week that going forward, maybe you start to notice, start to sync your cycles and start to be like, okay, I'm kind of getting that vibe that around this week of the month, I'm not very social. I just want to curl up in a ball. Then let's try to not plan our most social activities during that time. Right. So when we can, I think it's nice to start to look at this and how to regulate our energy and how to sync with those cycles.
Mm. I love that you're covering this in your workshop because it's just so much to take in, and I absolutely love it. In terms of like trying to sync with the cycles and seeing, I've been trying that for years, right? I started off with the moon and then I started looking at the seasons and really just kind of matching up into I'll do like intuitive eating in that way too. I match that, I sync that up with the seasons as well. And it's just like, where do you even start? So I know that you're going to be guiding people through a beautiful workshop where you're going to be able to guide them on where to start and how to keep that going.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's gonna be one of the parts of the Sacred Alchemy program.
Yeah, I love
I'm
that.
excited. Yeah.
You bring with you such an immense capacity to hold space for others. Can you tell us what is on the horizon on your path moving forward?
Yeah, for me, I'm excited to I've started to lead more workshops. I absolutely love for years. I've worked with one-on-one clients, also held workshops virtually and in person. I've started to lead more workshops at festivals and I'm looking for those kind of um, bigger audiences to where that I can ideally help motivate or uh, lend support to more people. And eventually, I have a vision of leading sacred retreats on the chakras of the earth and bringing in spiritual guides, practitioners, medicine people, um, conscious leaders, scientists, and participants, and seeing when we gather at these sacred sites, like the root of chakra of the earth is Mount Shasta. And so, for example, if we can gather there and we can gather in prayer and meditation and doing ceremonies and transformational workshops and what kind of shifts in consciousness can we have, when we focus on these powerful energy centers of the earth? So that's like a bigger vision that I have going forward. And two, right now I'm pouring my life's work, what I've been doing for the past 10 years, almost 10 years. And I've created this deep dive program called Sacred Alchemy. And I'm really excited to call in those soul aligned women that are ready to work on their healing, really reconnecting with themselves. So it's going to be a journey of self discovery and healing and transformation and shedding those layers that no longer serve, reconnecting, regrounding. So essentially, we're going to kick off on October 24th. We're going to meet on Tuesdays and we're going to kick it off with our opening ceremony. And so this is going to be a nice sacred ceremonial space where we're going to kick off our journey and then we're going to flow. And each week we're going to build through the chakras and really clean our energy, clear our energy that we can. We're going to do each week, we're going to meet live and we're going to have going through meditations and rituals and teachings. And then there'll be some home play so that participants can really apply the work that they're learning. And so we'll be learning like grounding practices, rooting, connecting with our roots, and then moving up and like working through our emotions, working through creativity, maybe creativity blocks, working with our will to become, forgiveness exercises, speaking our heart's truth. So learning to really speak our voice, connecting with our deep wisdom, connecting with the eternal light. So we'll use the chakras as a guiding post, and they'll be, like I said, little, and I'm also going to incorporate animal medicine. So I've learned so much from the animal kingdom. So each week there'll be an animal as inspiration and as medicine and teachings. So yeah, it's, I'm really excited about it. We'll end with a closing ceremony just right before Christmas, right before the holidays. And in addition to our group journey, I'm also giving the participants one-on-one session with me. So just because I think that's really important too. So to get some, an energy healing activation with me. And so we can connect one-on-one and work through something that's more personal to the person and do some Reiki and even shamanic clearings or core belief work. So whatever's needed. So I'm very excited.
It sounds exciting. It sounds like such an incredible space for anyone that's looking to start their journey, start somewhere, right? Megan is going to be offering so many, like such a wealth of knowledge, and also so many different modalities that you can go on and experiment with. I wanted to close out by asking, where can people check out your program and stay up on your future offerings?
Thank you. Yes. So you can find me, for sure. You can check out my website, which is mindbodysoulwellness.com. And you can find more about Sacred Alchemy there, as well as one on one sessions. Feel free to, if you want to stay in touch via my newsletter, feel free to drop me a line, or you can go to the contact page and subscribe, join the community, and you'll be the first to know about. I always like to share like many of the things we've been talking about today. So things that I feel like can give a framework to someone, can help them on their healing and growth journey, as well as upcoming events that might be near you or virtual and programs as well. So definitely check that out. And if you are on social media, I mean, Megan Allen's pretty common name, but you can certainly look me up if you want on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm infinite.medicine, because we all, I think, carry that infinite medicine, that infinite wisdom within. So yeah. So mindbodysoulwellness.com or infinite.medicine is a great places to find me.
Beautiful. And I will be linking all of those down below. I want to thank you, Megan, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and sharing your Sacred Alchemy journey and workshop with us. And for all of the listeners, go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified on new episodes. Let us know with an emoji or a comment down below what you thought about this episode. We would love to hear from you. It also helps the algorithm in helping people find us. And we'll see you next Thursday.
Bye. Thank you so much for having me. Lots of love.